Hi, Tom again. Pleasure having you here with Goldinvest. And the occasion really is that Pulsar put out what I think is a game-changing news release yesterday, which I think wasn't fully appreciated and understood by the market. So the purpose of this call, of this conversation, really is to try and give some more color, explain what the significance of this find is. So the floor is yours, and just please give us high level, answers so that we can have a real conversation.
Okay, well, look, thanks for having me again, Sven. And look, I'm pleased that you think the same way that we do. This announcement regarding the seismic is quite the game changer. So, what does it mean? To put it in perspective, is that with the helium discovery that we've got, this is our Topaz project in Minnesota. So, it was drilled a number of years ago. The raw gas there had a 10.5% helium content, which is what got us, Pulsar, interested. We then came into the project and took ownership of it. But it really was a bit, the old saying, the cart before the horse, right? So this discovery being made, which is magnificent, but typically in the exploration industry, you get all the lead up data first. So this could be from, say, magnetic data, gravity data, seismic data, geochemistry. You then plot all that together, interpret it, and that will then guide you as to where you should put your drill hole, and then you certainly hope that that would be successful. However, with our project, went straight to the drill hole, was successful without any of that build-up data. So since the company's listed, which is only a few months ago in August this year, we went out and we embarked upon the seismic survey. Prior to that, as a private company, we collected the gravity and magnetic data. But yes, just now we've announced the results of the seismic. Must admit, really pleased with these. Geophysics is, always a bit of the dark arts. How do you interpret what's happening down at a kilometer's depth beneath the ground? There's many different techniques which state that they can find what you're looking for you, but mostly it's a combination of techniques that you need to find it. But with finding gas reservoirs, and by reservoir I mean sort of your host lithology that has the potential to host the gas. Seismic's really your go-to for that. So certainly from the hydrocarbon industry, oil and gas, it's used extensively, but for helium as well. And so with the technique that we used, we didn't actually go for your most conventional seismic. So conventional seismic consists of inducing a charge, getting a shock wave to go through the ground. And so that would either be done using explosive, dynamite at the surface, set off that charge, sends the shock waves, and then you have receivers at surface that would then pick up the signal. Or you use these vibro-sized trucks, which are quite large trucks. They would then go along, stop, and then they would jack up and then start vibrating on the ground to once again induce that seismicity, that wave. It's not what we used. So we used a new one, which is becoming more and more, I guess, the norm, which is passive seismic. And this is where you have something that's the size of, say, a large coffee cup. And it's referred to as a node. And what this does is you put this on the surface of the ground, and it picks up passive seismic waves. So not ones that we are inducing into the ground, but ones that are already in existence. Now, our Topaz project up in northern Minnesota, it's right next to the largest iron ore mines in North America. These are quite substantial mining operations, and they have to blast quite regularly. So we're quite lucky. So in terms of our passive seismic, we've actually got quite a lot of induced seismic right nearby. And so that gives us a wonderful density of seismic waves going through the ground. So basically, these waves go through, they react, so they travel at different speeds through different rock types, and then these nodes pick that up. So we completed the survey a few weeks ago. It's now been all the data's been reviewed, and that's what we announced. And what we found is that the data correlates you know, almost perfectly with the data from the drill hole. And that's the most pleasing element for sure. So what we know from the drill hole is that from the top of hole down to about 542 meters depth, which is where the gas was intersected, that rock is it's an igneous rock. I won't bore you too much with the geology, but basically it's a very sort of dense, impermeable rock. It's very akin to if you're fortunate enough to have a nice, say, granite bench top in your kitchen, something like that, right? So in its appearance. So that is something that is very difficult for a gas to pass through. You know, it's pretty much impermeable rock. So that's what we pass through, 542 meters, then we hit the gas. And then beneath that, we don't know. It hasn't been drilled before, that depth hasn't occurred. But now with the seismic data, what we found is that the seismic waves in that top 542 meters, very consistent with the geology that we saw in that original drill hole. But then beneath it, where the gas starts, and then beyond into the unknown, we've got a significant velocity change in the seismic waves. And so it's a velocity decrease. So what you see is that in the upper bit, that igneous rock, is that it's very competent, consistent. You know, so those seismic waves, they roar through that. But now where the gas is, it's something that's you know, it's less consistent, less consolidated. What could it mean? Who knows, really? We have to drill to absolutely confirm it. But it's certainly something where it's not as competent. So this could be I don't know, a different type of rock type, a different lithology, something which is perhaps more porous, something where a gas can exist. And we know that a gas exists because it was hit there in the discovery well. But that particular unit, where the velocity decreases, beneath where the gas was encountered, it persists for another 600 meters. So this is something that's quite tall. It's quite a large area. But then laterally, so in the survey area that we conducted it has a surface aerial extent of about 7 square kilometers. But importantly, it's open in 2 directions as well. And the reason I say it's open is that we simply didn't put out enough seismic nodes further afield to find out how big this thing really is. So that's a job for the future, is to do further surveying just to find out how big it is. But in terms of our short-term requirements, well, we're extremely happy because it actually, you know, it's surpassed our expectations. It really does look very large. The thickness is just wonderful. For it to correlate with the drill hole data, perfect. And now we go off and we drill the appraisal well in February, and that one is effectively twinning the discovery. And that one, you'd like to think it's going to have quite a high chance of success, drilling within 20 meters of the known discovery. But having this additional seismic data on top of it, it just gives that further level of confidence. But perhaps more importantly, when it then comes to doing a resource update, having that seismic data will very much help to constrain the resource a lot better as well. You know, I think as I probably said in those announcements, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, indeed. It looks like we have a lot of confirmation of the historic success or the occasion of that, let's say, involuntary discovery that was made back in 2011 by some I think nickel explorers that were shocked to see to really get their drill rig blown away by the pressure of the gas coming out of the ground. So this time, obviously, we're getting our preparation is just for that. So we're moving in with a drill rig that can actually handle that kind of pressures.
Yeah, definitely. So it was most unexpected by that company that was out there exploring for nickel, as you rightly say. They were using quite a small mobile rig. It was not designed for gas by any means. So when they encountered the gas, you know, the descriptive words were, you know, it's terrifying and violent. The gas was really roaring out, so much so that it pushed out the 3-meter core barrel from 542 meters depth out at surface and then out the top of the rig like a projectile. So we know that it's an overpressured reservoir. So, you don't need conventional gas tools to say that you've got significant gas pressure when something like that occurs. So hence why our resource estimator, Sproul, was certainly happy to put their name behind it as a bona fide discovery. But now when we go out and drill in February, we've got the rig contract in place. Very happy with the rig. It's the one that we wanted. And that one, we're going to be, we use a BOP, blowout preventer. And what this is it's a safety mechanism for the rig. So if we do encounter, very overpressure gas, to then vent a blowout, as the name suggests, so that, it doesn't start venting out to the atmosphere or cause a safety issue. So we've gone for a larger one to take, quite significant pressure. So that one's already going to be on its way. The other thing too is that the gas is actually, it's a closed system. So even if we are to hit, this high pressure gas with the helium, you're not going to be seeing it venting out the top of the rig. It's not going to be this big sort of song and dance. It's not going to be like, the old Western movies where you start to see all the oil pouring out the top. It's actually going to be, I guess, a little bit boring, dare I say it, because of this closed system. So we used a mud tank, not the nicest name on the planet, but basically what a mud tank is where you've got a fluid there, which is quite heavy, and you use that to then offset the pressure of the gas to maintain an equilibrium, so that the gas doesn't come out. It's contained and then held at bay whilst we then get all of our sampling taking place. So things such as confirming the what is the content of the gas, what pressure is it coming out, and then the additional test work after that.
You mentioned Sproul earlier as the engineering firm that gave this project already in the prospectus an initial, albeit small, resource. Sproul at the time only had available the assays of the drill of the gas that were taken at the time, but they did not have any insight in the geophysics or let alone the seismic data. How would that change their judgment already at this point? Do you think that might entail them to give this project even a larger resource? What is the resource that we're talking anyways?
Yeah, look, I think that they'll definitely be very keen to see the data. I mean, certainly it's something they'd love to get their hands on. But with it, for us, they went ahead. It's a confirmed discovery. The resource is quoted, as you say, albeit small. But really, they had to be conservative with this because the testing equipment wasn't there. So there's using the calculations based on what's the weight and diameter of that drill tube that was ejected from the hole. It was open for 4 days with no obvious loss in pressure before the hole was sealed off. Information like that they used. So because of that, there was no absolute testing equipment that you don't expect to have for a gas show. So for that, they were conservative. So what we'll do is we're definitely sharing the data that we have now with them. I think it's unlikely to do any update to the resource now. Drilling effectively imminently, that will provide a lot of data. So I think there's probably money better spent to do that resource update once we finish the drill hole, and then they have all data available to them rather than doing a two-stage process.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about helium market and the perceived helium market for explorers. My perception was there has been or had been a lot of expectation, and there has been a lot of disappointment lately. I don't want to necessarily quote names here, but especially in the US, I would say companies have disappointed, maybe with one exception, Blue Star, which is moving towards, I think, a solid production. But I think that has contributed to that kind of that the fact that the market has stayed cool on stocks like Pulsar at this point, also in the context of an overall downturn in the Canadian market. But I see that what the market would need for helium is that one big success. And honestly, I think this project is now set up to potentially be that one, to deliver, because it has that seal on top of a potentially large deposit. We know from historical drilling it is high pressure, so we tick a lot of boxes: high pressure, potentially large size, and then also high tenor, which is the 10.5% helium that were measured at the time.
Yeah. No, look, it's a fair point. I think that probably the broader helium exploration and development industry has disappointed when it comes to investor sentiment. So, you mentioned Blue Star. I think that they've got a good project. One thing that works in their favor is it's high grade. So their helium content is high. Pulsar, our grade is high. So like anything, gold, silver, copper, everything that you get out of the ground, grade is king. Why? It just makes everything infinitely easier. The amount of gas that you need to find is less because it's such high content. The processing of it is simpler. The operation of it is simpler, less development wells. So I think a lot of the other companies in North America for helium, I mean, really, I guess it's on the back of the helium shortage. So there's been a helium shortage for 10 years, and you've got two options. One is you go off and you find something new, which is our approach. Yes. This is what Pulsar does. And with that, you got all the potential in the world, right? So we're off to a great start with the highest helium content out there. Now it's just, what is the size of the prize? So that's one approach. The other approach is that you go off and you look at existing known gas fields that do have a helium content to them. Most of those, I guess the Achilles heel may be a lot of them, because there's a hydrocarbon component to it. What do you do with the hydrocarbons? Is there a market for that? The other thing is the helium concentration is typically quite low because of that hydrocarbons there. It's diluted the helium down. So when you go into, say, production, if you've got 0.5%, 1% helium, then you're going to have quite a few operating wells for that to work. And then also you're going to have probably a stream of these as well to come online, because it's an old field, it's an old gas field, it's been depleted, right? So the flow rates are going to be less than, say, something which is virgin, which hasn't been tapped before. So you've got that as well. So look, it's no reason why they can't make money, but it's just going to be slightly more challenging. So it's there's different approaches. And the other thing is that helium exploration is very new. It's an industry which is just about to celebrate its 10-year anniversary, and a lot of people do make reference saying, well, okay, for the helium you got to be in a conventional gas setting and so on. It's like, sure, okay, fine, you can find helium there, but when you're in those conventional systems, there's also that risk that you're going to get hydrocarbons, because that's where 95% of the world's helium currently comes from. So the other mindset is it's a bit like native hydrogen, right? So native hydrogen, native helium, they come from completely different sources than the hydrocarbons do. So why not look closer to the source rock, right? Why look in a conventional sedimentary setting where, sure, you've got your traps and reservoirs, but there's no reason why you can't have traps and reservoirs in the source rock where you get your helium and hydrogen as well. So I think that there's a bit of a learning curve out there, and there's no fault of anybody for not truly understanding it yet, because it's so new.
No, I totally agree. I have only tapped into helium maybe a couple of, half a year ago, something like that. And to understand what the challenges are and what differentiates different projects is really interesting. One thing, which you know I took away is that you want to find a lithium, make a lithium discovery where it's the hardest because there's no leakage, and that seems to be the general way of how deposits are being discovered by satellite imagery. You go where you see exhaustion of helium. In the case of Minnesota, you wouldn't. This is would be referred as a blind deposit.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm sure you're referring to helium earlier when you started talking, not lithium, yes. Of course, Sven. But okay. But yeah, look, with us, with our project in Minnesota, you would never know that there was a helium occurrence there at surface, at least, because you have that, impermeable rock. The gas is trapped at depth. So very fortunate that it was discovered by chance with that original discovery well. But then saying that. Just looking at it, the geology, and won't bore you with that, but it's got all the key ingredients. It's got some of the oldest rocks on the planet, which is what you want as your source rock for helium. It's got a liberation mechanism, which is the mid-continent rift, where North America was trying to break itself in half 1 billion or so years ago. You got all the traps and seals, so you've got it's actually the perfect environment for helium. It's just that no one really looked at it before. Now all of a sudden we're seeing that. We've got our area where there's that magnificent discovery. We're consolidating our land position further afield around it. But one thing we do know is it's not an isolated occurrence. We know this is regional and quite prolific. So one of our biggest tasks is making sure that we get all that land of interest. I mean, we know that 160 odd kilometers away, there's another occurrence which has got 2% helium coming out of the ground. So it's by no means isolated, but otherwise, yeah, look, it's fortunate that it was found, but yeah, looking for these things is, I guess, not easy, but yeah, we're in the right place.
Anyways, Tom, there's a lot of additional aspects that we could talk about. This has been already a long interview. I would suggest let's take that up again. Maybe early next year when you're getting closer to drilling. I must say I'm really excited about what that news really showed. As you said, it fits perfectly with the model, and that's what geologists like to see. And it's just about logic, right? I think, right? It's about why do things occur, and all of a sudden you find the reason, and then you feel more comfortable. Thanks, Thomas, for taking the time today, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with you in the very near future.
Well, then next time, let's do it. I'll be speaking to you from the drill rig there in northern Minnesota. I look forward to that, Sven. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.